thank you very much, and God bless. Welcome to our session 6 of Helping Hurting People. I was just mentioning to Sean how vitally important it is for us to have this first segment of what it is he's doing and teaching us the word about these different things, these different situations, because without that, what I bring up and what I talk about is just, it's nothing. It has no meaning, because if we aren't leading people to the scriptures, if we aren't leading them to God and prayer and the things that really will make a difference in their lives, and we're just kind of a clanging cymbal, aren't we? We need to have that love of God in what it is we do. So I have a bunch of notes in your packet there, and hopefully you will read them this week, because probably we're not going to go over a whole lot of them this evening. I kind of changed what it was I wanted to do this evening with you, and I hope this works and helps you, because my whole main goal here is to help you have skills in how to work with people. If you want to know about major depressive disorder, just go online. I do in my notes, I have the criteria there. Probably if you look at it, you'll say, oh my, I'm this, I do that, oh, I don't want to get up, oh, I get irritable, oh, I do. Yes, we all do. We probably could match every one of those at some point or another. The big thing is impairment. Is there impairment? And it's the same thing with generalized anxiety disorder. All those list of things there, do they cause impairment? Am I able to get up in the morning, get a shower, get myself to work, do the things I need to do? Do I come home? Maybe I'm a little blue. Maybe I'm a little upset, something like that. That's not depression, major depressive disorder. So just to be aware of that, and those things are there. I want to ask you a question. Who has ever had what they would consider a depressive episode? Just a time when you thought you just were kind of depressed, okay? So what I'm going to do is ask Gail to come up. Gail, would you come up? And I'm going to ask Gail a little bit about her depressive episode. And what my goal here is, I'm going to ask her some questions. I'm not going to do the conversation piece necessarily. I'm just going to help you look at what it is that she's saying so that you would have some ideas of what to say. So just tell us a little bit about what's causing this depressive episode.
I have a son who's going through a lot of emotional and physical situation. And so it's causing anxiety and a certain amount of depression over it, because it's going to work out, but right now it's in that stage where it's kind of difficult. It's very difficult.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so in what she just explained there, and what she just said, what would you respond with? What would you say? Going through a tough time here. Her son is very, 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 very ill. She was kind of holding back a little bit about not wanting to confess how ill he really is. And it's very difficult. He's a young man. He's in the prime of life. What would you say at this point? Okay, so how would you say it? So she said validation. I'm asking her how she would say it.
I would tell her that seems like a really tough situation to be in.
Okay, so this sounds like a really tough situation for you to be in.
It is.
Mm-hmm. Now, when I said that, how did you feel?
I agree with you. I felt an agreement with you.
You felt it, a closeness, I agreed, you felt like I was hearing you. Mm-hmm. Now, what if I said to you, oh boy, well that's terrible, but you know what just happened to my son? Let me tell you what happened to my son. How would that go over?
We felt dismissed.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, what's something else you'd like to tell me about your son and just how you're feeling about it, how you're dealing with it?
Well, it's difficult because his personality's changed a lot. His wife and him are separated. So a lot of things, this is the second time he's gone through this. So the first time his wife was his support. This time he doesn't really have that. So I'm more of his support. And I'm not really great in that area. You know what I mean? It's been a long time since I've had to be a support for someone. So it's a little stressful for me to have to consider, like he can't have his children unless there's somebody with him in case he has another seizure or whatever, So, yeah, so it's a little stressful.
Okay, so let's hold that thought there. Now, did you notice how she was talking and where she was looking when she was talking? She wasn't looking directly at me the whole time. She was processing, looking over, looking down and all that, but yet we were connecting. I was watching with her. I've turned towards her. I'm not this way, or like they are on television, and she's talking and I'm behind her, kind of thing, like they do on TV. How can people converse like that? I don't know. So, okay, so with that being said, we were having, good body language, good distance. We don't want to be too close. And we don't want to be too far away either. That's not good either. So we were a decent distance here. So what would you add then? What would you say to help her out at this point? What might you say? There's no one right answer, so don't think you have to have the right answer. You'll be embarrassed if you say something. This is time for you to learn. Samara?
I would tell her that I am here for her to support her, and anytime she feels the need to talk, to call someone, to be listened, I will be all ears for her.
Okay. I agree with your statement. I just think it's a little too early. It's too soon in the conversation to close the conversation down. But bring it up later. Okay, Terry?
I think I would want to reflect what she's saying and maybe get a little bit of clarity at how it's affecting her.
All right, so what would you say?
I would say something along the lines, well, Gail, I mean, that sounds like it's a situation that is very overwhelming for you. And, I'm just wondering how that affects you. What's going on with you? How is it affecting you?
Okay, so this sounds like it's really a serious situation for you. And how is this affecting you?
Well, like last night, I go to Berean. I enjoy Berean. And when I got home, I was just like, I'm not going. I'm not sleeping as well. And I'm more scattered. My brain at work, it's harder for me to focus and continue, stay on focus, which I deal with people, so it's, yeah. So.
What would you say now? Who has an offering up here? What would you say now? Sucks to be you. What? Come on. What? What's up? Anything? What would you say? All right, Smart.
What strategies have you used to help you in the past to deal with similar situations?
So you've been in similar situations with your son. He was on tour several times, wasn't he?
Yeah.
He was over in Afghanistan, right? Iraq, okay. So he was in war zones. You've been through some pretty tough times with him. What worked for you before that would help you now?
Well, Sean's teaching
Okay.
was very helpful. God's always, it's just being able to know that God is always there, and that how much he cares for me, and that he wants me to put my burdens on him. That's his desire. So that's very helpful to know that.
So when you go home and you close the door and you don't want to come back out to go to your favorite Berean, what could you do instead, possibly? Or what do you think you need to do?
I took a bath and prayed.
Okay, and was that helpful for
Yeah.
you? Okay, so doing that. Now, what are some other things that might be helpful to you?
They say exercise. I don't see that. Never found that to be true. But and being with people that love me, and, my family, and
So if people gave you a call now and then just to check
Yeah.
up how you're doing, or ask you if you want to go have a cup of tea or something like that, those things would help? Okay, so how did you feel with those questions that I asked you?
oh, good. It's a little weird because you're up here. You know, and you have all these people, and I was like, crap, they could ask me anything. But I think one-on-one, it would have been a little more calmer and you know, what I mean, more beneficial,
Okay,
you know.
all right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. So it's, you know, good points to look at. I was getting people to share a little bit more about it, which was suggested. If you need to ask a little bit of clarifying questions, if you know, without being nosy or trying to get, you know, you'll never get the whole story. You know, if you two are in the situation and you're both telling about the same situation, your reality, his reality, and they're not going to match up. You know, any good lawyer or anybody that works in a court knows that. You know, they just don't ever really match up. So it's not that you're trying to get to the bottom of this and who did what and where did this happen and all. That's not the point. The point of the story is, for Gail, was that she's feeling overwhelmed, trying to be in a role that she's not used to being in. This is very difficult for her because the family is separated. She's trying to love her son and be the best she can, help her daughter-in-law. There's a lot of factors going on here with her situation. So yes, it is depressing. She is in a sullen state about it, but she's not undone because why? She loves God. She knows the power of God in her life, and the more she pushes into that, the better she is. Okay, feeling better just because somebody would listen to her and her explain that will help her to feel better. Okay, now a couple of the questions: how did you get into it? How did you get out of it? Before. Those things are important, helping somebody to find balance in life, or being able to, we get out of balance so easily. We have to have work, we have to have play, we need to have our you know, intimate time with people, we have to have just casual friends, we need, you know, we need balance, we need God in our lives, and that God part has to be in balance too. You know, what we do with our prayer and reading. We can't just read and not pray. We can't just do that and not do any service. You know, it has to be a balance. So your job as a listener is not to fix people. And if you can get that in your head, and we're not telling people what to do, we are helping them to see what it is they've done or what it might be some suggestions. You can make a suggestion. You know, I can say, like to Gail, I could say, you know, would you mind if I made a couple suggestions of something? Well, yeah, sure, because right now I'm not thinking clearly and I could use a couple godly suggestions from you. Well, I gave you a paper there that says Carl Rogers, Positive Regard. Carl Rogers was a psychologist who, I've got it here, psychologist who was a humanist psychologist. He did have some Christian background. He did go to a non-denominational theological seminary, but he is attributed with using unconditional positive regard, coming up with that. And that unconditional positive regard has really been shown to be something that definitely works in working with people. And it's basically what I've been talking about in these last 2 sessions. He made the statement that the curious paradox is that when I accept myself just as I am, then I can change. The other one that he said that I think is worthwhile is the only person who is educated is the one who has learned how to learn and change. And how he says that we do this is through this unconditional positive regard. It's coming next to someone in love and care, non-judgmentally. The first one he talks about is congruence, and that refers to being real and authentic and genuine with others. I hear this so much from especially younger folks when they say, you know, I just really want something that's genuine, and I want something that's honest. I'm tired of these superficial conversations. I want something that has meaning to it. And when we come alongside someone and we are authentic and we model that authenticity, where we show our suffering and our pain, and that I feel safe with you hearing that and you listen to it non-judgmentally, and then vice versa. It is such a healing process. The unconditional positive regard means the listener genuinely cares for the person speaking and does not evaluate or judge their thoughts, feelings, or behaviors as good or bad. Each person is accepted and valued for who they are, as they are, without stipulation. Those we help need not fear judgment or rejection from us. We lead them to the Word, we lead them to what the Word says, but we do it in love and care and kindness. Accurate empathic understanding is very vital in this unconditional positive regard. Accurate empathic understanding means that you, the listener, understands the person's experience and feelings in an accurate and compassionate way. Now, I've never had a son who was in the military. I've never had a son who has the difficulties that Jason is having. But yet, God gives me the ability through the Holy Spirit and gives you the ability to be able to empathize with what it could be like. How, just heart-wrenching it is to see this unfold, to be not in control, to have to rely on doctors and so on and so forth. You can empathize with that. We are able to, God gives us the ability to come alongside. And remember last time I said we hold it here? It doesn't become me. We hold it here, out here, and then we give it to God and we give it back to the person when we've talked about it and we've looked at some solutions to it. You recognize that each person's experience is subjective and therefore you strive to see things from the person's unique perspective. An important part of accurate empathic understanding is for you to convey that you get it by reflecting the person's experience back to him. This encourages a person to become more reflective with themselves, which allows for greater understanding of themselves. If you've ever had an experience where you felt like someone really got you, they completely understood where you're coming from, or you could truly relate to the way you felt, that's accurate empathic understanding. Have you ever had somebody do that for you? When you're just down and out, when things were just really not going well, and somebody came along and they just didn't say, oh, I get it, or, buck up, bucko, let's go, but really was able to come alongside you and empathize with you, and it wasn't about that person, it was about you. When we feel that, and we know that unconditional positive regard is what he calls it, I'll call it the love of God. When we feel that, we know that we are truly loved and we have that attachment and that connection with others. Rogers asserts that empathy helps others pay attention and value their experiencing. So in doing what we did for Gail, even though it was, awkward and up here, hopefully it would help her to feel that that I was paying attention to her and that I value what it is that she's going through. And the other thing is to see earlier experiences in new ways. We tried to help her see things in a different, in the light of context of things that has helped her before. And I got through it before, well, with God, I can get through this one again too. It helps people modify their perceptions of themselves and others and of the world. When I know that I'm loved and cared for, when I know that the things that are going on inside me, that somebody else, like my husband, he comes alongside me, and he's very empathic about it, and he encourages me and teaches me. And when he does those things, I do feel like I can then be a better person, go and do better, be a part of the world and do things better. It encourages me, and it increases my confidence in making choices and pursuing a course of action. Jeannie Watson states that 60 years of research has consistently demonstrated that empathy is the most powerful determinant of client progress in therapy. She puts it this way: therapists need to be able to responsively attune to their clients and to understand them emotionally as well as cognitively. When empathy is operating on all three levels, interpersonal, cognitive, and affective, that's emotionally, it is one of the most powerful tools therapists have at their disposal. So you don't have to be a therapist. You don't have to have 8 years of graduate education and all this stuff. I'm teaching you how to do this. You can come alongside someone with this kind of unconditional positive regard, the love of God in your heart, and be able to help someone. Now, I have a couple of people who said that they would be interested in being guinea pigs today. So, Shelby, why don't you come on up, and we'll do a little more of this working situations here. Okay, so you have something to tell us? Okay, come a little closer because we're using the podium mic.
Well, I've also just been really struggling with stuff at work. So I don't really like my job. I don't feel like it's really my strong suit. I just like listless, and I'm doing things that are more information technology and whatever, where I feel like I'm really good with people, and I don't get to do that at all. And my boss is super critical, and I just don't feel like I can do anything right. And how much of this do you want me to say?
Okay, well, that's fine. That's a good place to stop. Okay, so what would you say at this point?
Nothing. They have nothing for me.
No, they do. They have lots of ideas.
Job's overwhelming.
So it sounds like your job's overwhelmed.
It is overwhelming.
Okay, so the question, or the response didn't bring much else out, did it? So what would I follow up then with? Because now we have awkward pause.
Why am I
Okay.
there?
Okay, we don't want to ask the why question, but your thought of the question is very good. What is it that's keeping you there in this job, since you really don't seem to like it very well?
Well, I do like a lot of the people, and the pay is good. So I'm afraid that I wouldn't make as good of money, and I don't want that loss of relationship, as well as I get to work from home on Fridays, and my boss is pretty lenient with my traveling, and it's pretty close to home, like it's right in Guilderland. So.
Okay, Jerry?
I'd like to ask, have you ever dealt with difficult people before?
Have you ever dealt with difficult people like your boss before?
Well, sure, you, Jerry. Sorry.
That wasn't in the script. Okay. So have you dealt with difficult people before?
Yeah, but not necessarily in such a subordinate way. Usually if I'm dealing with someone that was being maybe overly critical, I had more of an even playing field. But when it's just my boss being overly critical and not really investing in me and things like that, I feel like I have an arm tied behind my back.
Okay. Now, you had a suggestion, Christine?
Have you spoken to anyone about it, or are you kind of holding it all in?
I'm kinda holding it.
Have you asked anybody about it, or are you just kind of sitting on this?
I've talked to my coworker a little bit about it, but that hasn't gone anywhere. You know, he's the golden boy, and he's great at what we do, and I'm not.
Okay, so what would your goal be in this conversation? What would you think at the end of your conversation would be a good space for you to be? What's something that you could help her look at that would help her get to some little itty-bitty, even itty-bitty tiny change she could make that might help her in this goal?
If she's unhappy where she works, I think she kind of has to weigh that out. You know, weigh out your happiness versus the job perks that you described.
Okay, so you're seeing a kind of a mixed emotion here. Okay, and let's see what Matt was going to say too.
My question would be,
you mentioned that you're doing a lot of IT tasks, but you really have a heart for people and you're really good with people, and I would definitely agree with that. So my question is, like, what kind of job could you see yourself doing that you think might be a better fit than what you're doing now?
Okay, so similar,
Yes, I would want to help her to pay for herself, whether she wants to continue in this job or whether she wants to pursue something else.
okay, so both of them in the same kind of an idea of, okay, you've got this job, are you thinking about looking at something else that might suit your skills better? You know, what is it about this dichotomy here that you have that is not working very well for you? So those are great questions, all right?
I think I would ask her, if somebody else was telling you what you're telling me right now, what would you suggest to them? And I think that honestly,
Flip the
I think
script.
that's the
Nice.
ultimate solution, and it's like, I think, if you phrase it like that, she's able to like come out and think of it like externally, and not view it from her own angle as much. And she, you know, she's a people, person, so she wants to help people. So, I don't know.
Yes, no, what Dan was saying, I wanted to call him his dad's name, what Dan was saying was that it would be good to be able to say, all right, if somebody was telling you this story, what would you say to that person? That's always a kind of a good technique to use. Not always, but it's a good technique to use. And
I would ask the question, how can she depend on God? Or sort of like, how can she find a way to be at peace, even in the midst of her current job, should she choose to stay, even just temporarily? Like, what can she do to find that serenity?
so what Sean was saying is, what could you do to help you find some serenity in this job situation that you're in the meantime, while you're going through this process? And really, that's our end goal, is that we want to help her to push into God more, to look and see what it is Scripture, Bible, prayer, and all this has about it. We know Shelby's very much into that and would do that and would be. But sometimes we get into these situations where even the best of us as believers, we need to be reminded. We need to be retold that, or suggested to. Great questions. All of you had great questions. This was wonderful. All right, so we have Jen. Now, that wasn't Shelby's problem. It was a canned thing that I told her about. And this one's, I gave him the role play situation. Okay, so I don't want you to think that she has a miserable boss, all right? If you're watching, boss, you're not miserable, all right? Okay, so Jen, looks like something's going on with you.
Yeah, I'm a little anxious. I applied to grad school, and I'm hoping to start a career as a business administrator. But I'm having this angst because I'm not sure. Like, I think I want to be a financial advisor too. I can't figure out which one I want to go towards.
Okay. How would you start this out?
Sounds like you have a real problem.
So it sounds like you're really anxious about trying to figure out what you want to do about graduate school.
Yeah, it's a really big decision. I'm not sure what direction I want my life to go in. What will be best.
All right, Jerry?
I'd probably ask, what makes you feel like it's a decision that has to be made right now?
Well,
I'm going to say it over
Oh, yeah,
so
yeah,
people
yeah.
online can hear it. Say it again?
I said, what makes you feel like it has to be a decision that you make right now?
So what is it about this that makes you feel like you have to make a decision right now?
well, I applied to grad school. I'm gonna have to pick a major. So it seems like there's a deadline to making a decision between one major direction in my career and then the other one.
So you're under a timeline because of graduate school that you're going to.
Yeah,
Yeah, so it's really putting pressure on you.
yeah.
Okay, so what
Definitely
else?
I think I would ask, why not just get like 3 master's degrees?
Okay, next one. All right.
You're cut off.
Okay, so, Matt,
So you mentioned business administration and, what was the other one?
Financial advisor.
Financial advisor. So what is it about these 2 majors in particular that you're attracted to these majors?
okay, so what he said was, so you mentioned 2 of these. What is it about both of them that you're looking at that you think is going to help, and what's kind of a hindrance to either one of them?
Well, I see myself in both careers. I could totally run a business by myself, and also I love finances. I'm really good at math, so it's like I'd be great in that.
So what is it about the 2 different fields that you think wouldn't be able to dovetail? You couldn't do one and be a finance person and be in the business? Okay, what about the question I just asked? Tell me what did I do with that question I just asked? I merged the 2, but what happened here?
You make it think.
What's that?
You make her think.
I was making her think, okay, well, good.
You made a suggestion.
I did. I made a suggestion that was outside of what it was she was thinking. It may be a good one, it may not be a good one. But I definitely changed the trajectory of the conversation to what it is I thought maybe she should do. We have to watch that we don't, she's in a vulnerable state. She's trying to make this decision. I don't want to make the decision for her. It sounded very innocent there, what I said. Sounded good. Let's just, But what I need to do instead is say, have you looked at a list of pros and cons for each one of these? And at the end, the kind of job that you want to have based on business or based on the financial piece. Have you done that yet?
I haven't, but that's a really good suggestion.
Okay.
She said she was really anxious about that. If she feels like she's going to be good at both things, why is she so anxious?
That's a great question.
Okay, so. Okay, I don't want to ask why.
No, okay, rephrase.
Yeah, I will. I'm just pointing out because this is all learning. Nobody's done anything wrong here. So, what did she say?
Why are you anxious?
Okay, so what, why?
You got this.
Okay. So Jen, you're saying you're really anxious about this.
Yeah.
What do you think it is that's pushing up the anxiety?
Well, some of it is making that decision, but the other part of it is that this school's really far away. I would have to relocate and potentially pay extra money or find another job to then supplement living on campus. And so this is another just really big factor that makes me pretty anxious.
So asking that question did what? It opened up more information, didn't it? This makes a whole big difference. It's not just this or this. It's, do I want to leave home and go and be somewhere else and spend a lot of money to live? Just because of this. Yes, John?
I would also like to ask, in which direction do you think you could serve God better? And, based on this other revelation about the campus, is there a fellowship there where you would have the support of other believers, in prayer and so on, or would you be all alone?
Okay.
That's a really big factor that a lot of times people don't.
So
think about.
what Sean was asking is, whatever you just said, okay? Yes,
God's direction.
God's
and
direction.
Is there a support?
Is there a support? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Are you asking?
Mm-hmm. I just asked what he did.
Okay.
Hopefully they heard it online.
Yeah, that'd be good. Well, I think as a financial advisor, I think that would be really helpful. I heard there's a BEC class coming up, Financial University. I mean, I could totally get in on that and help people out with their finances. Plug. But yeah, I mean, I can definitely look into the schools clubs and see if there's a Bible study or a church nearby. I can definitely look into that. I haven't done that yet.
Well, it's always good to, figure out what God's leading you, how that's working, and you've been praying about it, right? Yeah.
Yep.
And then figuring
Lots of
out
prayers.
who is going to be there as a support. We always need some kind of support system when we get to where we're going. Even if it's just temporary for a year, we need a support system. That's good for us. Okay, thank you very much. All right, now, another question for all of you is, how would you end this other than turning around and walking away? How would you end this conversation? What would you do to kind of bring it to a close? What might you say? Betty? Very good. Next steps when you're going to get in touch again. Very good. I'm sorry? Summarize what you talked about. So what we said was, you're this and going to school and that and doing the summary, a little bit of everything. A little anxious about this, going away. Very good, yes?
I would ask how she would specifically want me to pray for this situation. Like, what things do you really want prayer over?
Okay. Would you like to pray right now?
Yeah.
And that's always a good one, too. Anything else?
Thanking her to have the courage to share with you what she has shared.
Very nice. Thank you for sharing that with me. I'll remember that in my prayers, and I really appreciate your openness and your honesty, to be open and honest about. Jerry?
I probably offer a scripture to meditate on that has either helped me or that I know is applicable to the circumstance with anxiety, like Isaiah 26:3 or something like that.
So Jerry is saying offer some scripture that was meaningful to him, and that he's gotten some very good results from, and offer that as a possibility to share. Anyone else? Okay, these are good. You got the idea. You see how it can work. And in your community activities paper, it talks about there at the top, it says session 6, community activity. I want to read this to you and talk you through this a little bit. It says example. This is an example of a conversation. As you look at your situation, what would you say would be the first small indicator that you are beginning to get better? And the person you're talking to would say, I don't know. Maybe I would go for a while without being depressed. You would say, well, that would be our goal, but what would be the first small step in that direction? What would be the first little thing that would tell you that you're beginning to feel better? The person might say, I don't really know. You might say, well, let me ask you this. We don't want to get put off by the don't know question, or answer, I don't know. The respondent says, the listener said, let me ask you this. What is the first thing that your husband would notice as you began to get better? What would tell him that you have begun to change? Because she mentioned up here, what would be the first small step? So the listener wants to know. The person, I would pray with him once in a while. I won't do that now. I don't get answers to prayer anymore. So you could think about this, and what you could do is go jump on the not getting answers to prayer anymore. Well, why don't you get answers to prayer? All you have to do is have faith. We could jump that direction, but that's not what this particular example shows. So praying with your husband once in a while would be noticed as a positive step. Instead of looking at what the negative part was about not feeling like prayer works, looking at the positive step of possibly that she suggested praying with her husband. Person, yes, he really thinks it will help me. You, in the past, have you prayed together and things have gotten better? Yes, a few months ago we were praying and I felt much closer to him and to God. But now I just don't want to and am so tired I haven't wanted to. You, okay, instead of jumping on the person about, we got to get in there, you got to do this, or no, it says, okay, you know this has helped before. We don't want to get distracted away from what the theme here is, and that is getting something going here that's some little step that's going to help this person. Okay, you know this has helped you before, and you know the scriptures about how important prayer is. So maybe by doing this again once a week, you will begin to feel better like you did before. Bringing back the past that was positive into the present. And then if the person is unaware of verses, then take her to verses in the Bible. Maybe in this situation, the person may talk about feeling distant from Yahweh and Jesus Christ, or talk about how hard it is to pray aloud, or some other thing. Making small, tiny steps will add up to big changes. It is also good to let the person figure out what the steps would be on their own. You can guide that process. If the task gets too large, then or gets off the mark, people aren't going to do it. But if it's little, like we gave Jen a little, she has a little to-do list of, let's look and see if there are any believers in the area. I'll find out. I have ways of finding out. So leaving a person with some step in a positive direction that they're willing to do and they say yes, and that collaboratively you came up with it. You don't tell them to do it. It's collaborative. Okay? Do you have any questions on any of this? The other thing I want to make mention of, and if you do, I'm not trying to cut you off. Any questions? The other thing I do want to mention about is the suicidality. Suicidality that we are concerned about as professionals, and that is the suicidality. I don't have anything other than what's in your notes there about it, very little. The thing is, there's probably not anyone in this room who at some point or time in their life kind of thought, just might be a better place if I just wasn't here messing it up. And we have thoughts like that. They come from, not from God, they come from the other side. And that's what happens. But the thing is, we don't harbor the thought. That's how sin conceives itself. The thought will come in, but do we conceive that thought and think about it and think about it? Well, yeah, it would be better. Well, yeah, look, I wouldn't have to go through all this, whatever. Sin conceives itself in our mind, and then we think about it and think about it and think about it. Then we plan how. Oh, we just watch a few TV shows, or we look on YouTube. That YouTube's great for figuring out how to off yourself. And you can go anywhere and find this kind of information, how to do it. And women never use guns and stuff or very rarely do because it's too messy. They're not going to do that. But there's lots of ways to do it. But when you're working with someone and they consistently go back to these thoughts of, just desperation, just no hope. They're listless about just no hope. There's, I just don't want to be here. Then what you need to do is get the person to urgent care or an ER, their primary care right away. If the person has a method how they're going to do it. If I had a client that I saw her for years, she would come every time she came to the session. In her handbag, she had a bottle of pills that was about this big, that probably half of it would have done it. And she kept those with her just in case. That day she decided, this is the day, I'm just going to end it. And she, as far as I know, is still alive, but she carried that bottle of pills with her. That's when you have to have professional help. That's when a person needs to be watched over by a professional. So if they have in place what it is that they're going to do and how they're going to do it, I'm going to run the car off the edge of the cliff and go up to Lake George someplace and find a cliff, and that's it, I'm going to do it. You get them into some kind of a primary care, urgent care, and get some help, okay? Now, If somebody just is talking about, then just as Sean was saying, it's the word. It's finding meaning and purpose in life. In my dissertation that I did on gratitude, I found that people who were thankful to God, not just thankful, but thankful to God, had more meaning and purpose in life than those who didn't, who were just thankful or who weren't thankful at all. So finding that meaning and purpose is important, and we can help teach people about gratitude, being thankful for what you have. And we have so much, don't we? So, any other questions, comments, concerns? So, we ran over a little bit this evening, so if you want to stay and chat with someone about some of these things, that's great. If not, then we'll see you next week, and we'll do sessions 7 and 8. God bless.